line. Bad bitches, every city in my tribe. Look behind. Booty dominate.
Hello, welcome.
Hi. Um,
What's your take?
do men really want to protect women? I, what what is your take on that?
No.
Okay. I think they do. Why do you think
Okay.
they do?
Let's start with your take, and then I'll tell you mine.
Okay. Um, in my experience, I believe that men do inherently want to protect women, and I think we as people have a different view of protection. Protection is things that prevent um, something from happening. And while it's impossible to prevent all dangers that happen in the world, I think most women have a man in their lives that that would protect them or has tried to protect them in some form.
Okay. Would you agree with me that when it comes to violence, uh, a majority and a high majority of the perpetrators are men?
I would agree that the high majority of reported violence is male.
So let's just say violence overall.
Reported violence.
No, I'm asking you violence overall.
I
What is it men or no?
I wouldn't say it was a high majority then.
What would you say is the percentage?
I don't know the percentage. That's why I couldn't say.
Just just give me a guess.
I don't want to give you an incorrect guess because whatever I say, you're gonna.
So then how are you saying it's not the high majority if you don't have?
Well, that's why I can't say it's the high majority because I don't have percentage.
So what are you basing this off of?
Well, you asked a question that I don't have the information to, so I didn't want to answer it incorrectly.
Right. So your opinion is that it's only reported violence is predominantly male perpetrators, but
Well,
unreported, you would say it's more equal between men and women, correct?
I would not say it's more equal. I said I don't know the percentage. I would say that men don't report violence against them as much as females would report violence against themselves. I'm not saying that the violence that the men don't report
I think
happens to.
underreporting is equal for both genders.
How, how would you know that without percentage?
Because we can see statistics that relate to underreporting as well. We can see statistics that relate to male underreporting as well as female underreporting, especially in certain instances, like when it comes to grape. But I'm asking you, even if we don't just look at reported claims, even if we just look at violence overall, would you
Yeah.
say the majority of perpetrators are men?
For this conversation, let's say yes.
Okay. Why is that?
I don't know.
Okay. So I think that right there shows me that men don't really have a desire to protect women because when it comes to violence, it is a men's issue. And when I ask men about this issue, they have no insight and they have no introspection. So when it comes to protection, I think men like this idea like, oh, yes, we like to protect women because under the patriarchal framework, they have something that women need, which is protection. And so they're in a position to be generous, and it makes women dependent and that they have to submit to them. And in all reality, statistically, the most likely person to abuse a woman is either her significant other, a friend, acquaintance, or family member. So even the ones that are deemed our protectors are the ones hurting us. So in a majority of relationships, men will not have to protect their partners. So I think it's very easy for men to say, I'm a protector and kind of cosplay that aspect of masculinity without having to do it. And they don't have any actual introspection, insight to violence of men, and then actually take a stance against men committing violence to where we don't need bodyguard ninjas protecting us. We just need men to stop hurting us. And there are no men talking about why they hurt women and how to stop hurting women.
Okay, I have a question, and I don't disagree with the premise of what you're saying, but the part I would push back on is when you say there's no men talking about why they're hurting women, you're talking about just the men that are hurting women, which would not speak about that. Whereas the men who are not hurting women can't tell you why men are hurting women because they aren't men that are hurting women. So we don't have the same thought process, right?
Yes, they are.
Wait, what did you just say?
Yes, they are. Even if you are a man who is not physically showing violence towards women, I think you not having any introspection into why this is a men's issue, what you define as masculinity, what social expectations there are of men from other men, then yes, you are enabling that behavior.
Wait, hold on. You said enabling, but I didn't. I said I can't give you insight to why a man, like a man that
Well, I
that
can. I'm not a man, and I think I can give you a summation on why violence is a men's issue.
you can give me an opinion on why you think men do those things, but you don't have an actual insight because you aren't a person who does those things. Like a man who grapes women. I can't tell you why men do that because I don't do that, nor do I subscribe to that. So I
But
couldn't say
just
what.
because you don't do it doesn't mean that you can't have research and insights and look at sources from people who do and
No,
understand their psychology
men
and
who
how they have been
do.
conditioned to do so. So yes, you can look at research. You
Let
don't
me
have
ask
to
you,
have a firsthand experience.
do men that grape women write about it for us to research why they do it?
Yeah, they're interviewed, they're studied, absolutely.
So
They're
they're
surveyed.
no, they're interviewed as to why
Even
that.
men are surveyed on their ideas of what grape is. And
Yeah.
it's interesting. There was a survey, I forget it where it was done, but I can look it up if you want, where they were asking men, like, have you done these things during intercourse? And they would say yes, yes, yes. But essentially, when the word grape was used, then they would say no, no, no.
Yes.
So there are men who do commit sexual coercion, sexual violence, sexual manipulation, who don't view it as grape, but it actually is.
Yes, and until a man is educated on certain things, they may not view something as great until they understand that it is. It's part of the reason why I teach my sons certain things because I didn't learn certain things until I was older. But to say that because there are men that do XYZ, that means that men do not inherently want to protect women, that I would push back on that, not because I disagree with the statements that you have made or the things that you're saying, but also because I would say because as a man in this world, knowing that I am not fully aware of all the dangers that women experience, I do speak with women. I have daughters, and I try to educate myself as much as possible so that I can protect the women in my lives that I have direct
But
influence
you
to.
have done no research into violence committed by men as a
I
man.
I didn't say I've done no research. You asked me statistics. I told you I don't know
No,
statistics.
I asked you why violence is a men's issue, and you said you didn't know. I would assume if you've done some research, you would have some type of
I
opinion.
would like to hear why you believe violence is a male issue. I think men are in
Because it's the foundation of masculinity.
to be violent.
Yes. Men who have mastered the language of violence are viewed as the most masculine. If we look at toxic masculinity, that is stoicism, competitiveness, aggression, dominance, misogyny, and homophobia, all which relate to violence. I would even argue, too, that when it comes to the patriarchy, the first act of violence that boys experience is not male to female violence, it is male to male violence, because as boys, they are taught by the patriarchy to cut off emotional parts of themselves. If they are sensitive, if they are compassionate, if they are empathetic, to kill those senses, to be stoic. If you're sensitive, you're either gay or you're a girl. If you don't jump off a tall cliff into some water, you're a pussy. it's constant, where men are emasculated for showing what are deemed traditional feminine characteristics, and they
Are,
are conditioned
oh,
to value violence, stoicism, so on and so forth.
okay, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. That wasn't
No,
my
that's
intent.
fine.
Apologize. So I hear what you're saying, and a lot of the things that you're saying, I feel like it's stuff that you've researched and you've gotten this information through the research. But I can tell you, as a man myself, my first experience with violence wasn't with another man. My first experience with violence was with a girl who was bigger than me when I was a little kid, and my big sister. So my first experiences with violence were not those things,
I
and
can
I
just
think.
say typically. I'm not saying all. I'm saying typically.
Okay, and I would say, and that's why I say a lot of things that do with have to do with men,
Your
from.
your anecdotal experience doesn't negate the societal and typical experience.
I didn't say my,
And I
but you're
and the
speaking.
fact that you don't have anything like, because I could just like, you could just be saying that like, there's nothing I can do to combat that anecdote, and I
I,
could just say I have a son.
yeah.
When he got hand, foot, and mouth, he had blisters on his bum, and it made it very painful for him to pull down his pants to use the restroom. So I got him a dress because it was more, it was just easier for him. And he loved that dress. He wanted to wear that dress. He wore it out to a restaurant, and little boys were picking on him for wearing
Hmm.
a dress. Um, because men have been conditioned to not wear dresses. If you do that, you are feminine. So, yes, I could just say my son experienced his first hate and stigma for doing what was viewed as girly or feminine simply for wearing a garment.
Uh-huh. I would have to listen to that, and I wouldn't disagree or refute if that was something you said that happened, because it would be your experience. And I think a lot of times when men and women are having these debates, about things that we need to work on to be better for each other, I um, I think that a lot of times the women that have experienced these things at a negative level have their feelings so strongly about it that then when they encounter a man who's actually trying to maybe understand but also give you an insight to how other things happen that may not be reported, they shut it off because they are like, well, it's not the normal experience. But the truth is, it is the normal experience. A lot of boys do. I think I wasn't raised to be violent, but I do know that me as a boy, I was told to do things that my sister wasn't told to do because we were going to be dealt with and experienced differently in the world. I didn't I don't believe I was raised to be toxic, but I was raised to be what now as a man society has told me I need to be, which is someone who's able to protect my family. And since we're raised to do different things as adults, things are pushed upon us differently when we're children. And I don't necessarily think it's wrong. I have boys, I have girls.
Can
I
you view anything outside your own experience?
Would you say?
Can you view anything outside your own experience?
I can view things outside of my own experience. I just use my
So why
experience.
would you say that the military and that the police force are essentially arms of society that are meant to perpetrate violence?
They're meant to perpetrate violence.
Mhm.
I don't know if I would say they're meant to perpetrate violence. What do you, can you explain why? If you explain it, then
Well, the
I can agree with
military and the police, they are meant to use violence to establish their authority.
I don't think they're meant to use violence to establish their authority. I think violence is an option, but that's not what they're meant to do. I don't agree with that.
They're not negotiators, they're not diplomatic, they're not peacemakers.
So when you get
Soldiers are
so
violent.
wait, so when you get pulled
Police
over,
officers are violent.
so when you get pulled over for speeding, the police officer used violence to pull you over.
They use their authority, and if you do not respect that authority, they will enforce it by using violence, which is why they are armed.
But they don't use violence. when you every time. So if you say they're meant to use violence, it would mean that violence is the option that they go to, which is not the option that they go to every
They
time.
use their authority, and their authority is backed by violence.
I have to disagree respectfully
Then why are police officers armed?
because criminals are armed.
No, they're not. Not all criminals are armed.
Wait, not all police officers are violent, but we are speaking in generalization in terms
We're
of
talking
it
all police officers are armed so that
and
they can use violence or the
criminals
threat of violence to establish their authority.
and criminals are armed. You would have to agree with that, correct?
Some criminals are armed, sure.
Do we live in a world where we are
But there are
allowed?
police officers in other jurisdictions who are not armed, with lethal force, I should say. But
Uh,
you have like
in,
I
in,
don't think you
in
and I can get past and get further in the argument unless you do acknowledge that the military and the police are designed to establish their authority through the force violence continuum.
I do not agree with that as it pertains to the police. I don't.
Do you
And
agree with that when it pertains to the military?
well, I think the military has a different objective than the police. So I can agree with it as it pertains to the military, but I
The
can't agree with it.
military is just for the military is just a higher degree of police. But like again, I don't think you've really like I don't know if you've done your research on like how the police operate. But are these both male dominated industries?
They are male dominated industries.
So yes, I think when it
No, no.
comes to
Can I ask you?
violence, to aggression, that men typically establish their authority and dominance through violence, which is what the patriarchy is.
Wait, so you're because the police and military are male dominated, it reconfirms what you're saying that men are violent because they have these jobs. Because there's a lot of industries
That violence is tied to masculinity.
but
Yes.
there's a lot of industries that are not violent that are male dominated. So that
Right.
doesn't
So
work.
that's one aspect of masculinity is violence. I'm sure there are other aspects of that masculinity that they can also fulfill from taking like labor jobs, so on and so forth. And I want you to think of this like a pyramid, and that at the top of the pyramid is explicit violence, which I do acknowledge that not all men fit into. But below that is um, hatred, verbal abuse, misogyny. Below that is sexist opinions, biological supremacy, and then below that is ignorance. And that each the foundation allows the next level to exist, and that level allows the next level to exist. So even if you are in the ignorance foundation, there are still other levels built on top that because there is ignorance, these levels exist, which I think a majority of men fall somewhere within this pyramid. Oh, this is mascara. Sorry, guys.
Um, okay, I see that example. I received that example because that made sense the way you explained that. Um, yeah, that was a really good example. I appreciate that information. I don't, I
Oh, thank
still
you.
I still would say I believe that men want to protect women. I don't say that while not believing that there aren't men out there that don't protect women and that there aren't bad people in the world. I
I
know
think
that
men, I'm sorry, I think men have the illusion that they're protecting women. And they're doing this to say, by I am their defender, I am their protector. If violence come toward them, I will step in the way. Rather than saying,
I don't believe
how is this violence occurring? What can I do to stop this violence? Because
yeah,
again, if you're saying that women need to link arms with men in order to have protection in society, that is also upholding the patriarchy because
I
it
didn't,
puts men in a dominant position and women in a submissive position.
but
Women should be free to exist without the aid of men.
I didn't say that, but I don't think people are free to exist without each other. I don't think women have to link with men to have protection from men. I think men and women have to link together for men to fully understand what is needed in protection when a woman does need protection from a man. Because to say you don't believe that women should need protection from men is to say that you believe that the world should be perfect and nobody should need protection from anyone, which we would love for that to happen. But until that happens, we need each other to prevent it from happening
I don't
when a
think
woman.
protection needs to be gender based.
I don't think protection needs
Because
to be.
I would actually argue that men are more likely to protect other men, especially abusers, than to protect women and children.
I don't
And
believe
that
that.
women actually
I
do a better job of protection when
I
it
don't
comes
believe.
to protecting children, especially.
I don't believe that. I believe that people who are abusers abuse, and the people who don't abuse don't know about the abusers. Like people, like a man, people, when I've heard women say, well, why aren't men reporting these things, right? I wouldn't hang out with a man that does things that are inherently against what I'm into. For example, I have a brother. um, there was a woman who was pregnant. She told him she thought it was his kid. He, for a long time, didn't want to take the test to find out if it was. Every time he saw me, we had a problem because I don't inherently believe with and agree with a man having a child in the world and not taking responsibility. So he could not be around me without me giving him shit about going to do take care of his responsibilities, or we can't hang out. And that's how I inherently believe men who are trying to do the right thing would act. But there are men who don't do the right things who also hide from us, and we don't know who they are. And so we then
So
get.
again, like your anecdote doesn't do much for me, because it's just one singular instance, and we can combat singular instance over singular instance. I can show that men protect other men more than they do actually women and children through statistics,
What's
and
the
even through social concepts that we have, like within grape culture.
what no, what's the
Women typically do not report because they do not think that they will be believed. And if they do also report, they also fear that they will be blamed, which is why we have within grape culture victim blaming. What were you wearing? What were you doing? And this is a common thing that women experience because men want to diminish other men's actions and put the accountability on women.
can I say that I think that that is true for some men, but that culture that those questions also arise because I think you would also agree that there have been instances where some women have gotten men in trouble and that man actually didn't do anything and those questions weren't asked. I think both
See,
things have.
right there is you doing it.
No,
Because
I
if we are going to talk about false allegations are so incredibly rare. You
no.
are more likely to be the victim of SA as a man than you
uh
are to be falsely accused of rape. So for you to bring up false accusations are a credible thing that we should be concerned about, which is why these questions are asked. You uphold that harmful ideology that
No,
protects
you're
abusers.
you're discrediting the fact because you're saying one group which deserves to be listened to. Because mind you, as a man, I don't ask my daughters those questions. If they say something happened to them, I believe them every time because
Again, your anecdotes don't do much for me.
but you're not listening. Every time you say something, I listen.
I
And
am
I
listening, which is why I'm saying that all you
but
give me is anecdotes.
I'm
Can
not
you
giving you.
give me any something, any concept, statistic within society?
You've actually given me no statistics without any references. You've just told me, and I've listened, and I've taken your word from it because in this
I've
back.
given you social constructions. If you would like statistics on women who don't report due to fear of victim blaming as well as not being believed, I'd be happy to give that to you. If you'd like me to give you grape statistics, I'd be happy to give that to you.
But this is the thing. I haven't asked because when you're speaking, especially as a woman, about these things, as a man, I'm listening and I'm receiving everything you're saying. I don't need to object or try to make you prove it because the truth is, what benefit does it do to me to try to make you prove something that is real in the world? I know it's real and it's happening. we don't need to worry. I'm not need to discuss and prove it as much as I'm talking to you from the other perspective. And this is why I said men and women need each other, because while everything you're saying is true and I have to hear it and I need to understand it, when I say to you stuff from the other side, you immediately shut me down because it doesn't fit what you're saying.
You just give me anecdotes. I want something on a generalization level because anecdotes don't do anything to move the conversation forward. Because I can give you an anecdote to dispute something that we're talking about is outside of society and how it's constructed.
But I didn't give you anecdotes. It wasn't an
You
anecdote
did.
to. I didn't give no. I didn't give you an anecdote to say that false accusing is the reason why these questions exist. I didn't blame women who are SA'd because that's not what I said. I said the women who are false accusing make people have to ask these questions would affect the women who shouldn't have to be asked these
Those
questions.
women do not exist. If they exist, it is 1 in 10, 20, 30. Like you would have to give me a statistic on how
Okay,
many false accusations there are because, again, it is so incredibly rare.
no,
Men use this talking
saying
point to
you're saying
justify the
I didn't
victim blaming, to
listen.
justify
I
that
didn't blame
there
a victim.
needs to be some kind of
I did not
doubt
blame
when
a
it
victim.
comes to victim testimony.
I did not blame a victim, but you would also have to say through what you've just said, if it does happen, it means that it is something that happens. And if it's something that's happening, then it's partially responsible. And you're trying to say just because it's a small percentage, it has no bearing on what other people are doing, and that's not true.
It does. It is true. It is 100% true because it is not the false allegations that make this, that cause this issue. It is that in the patriarchal view, men are credible and women are not.
I didn't
Because
say it was
even when
a,
children report SA, they typically report it to a woman because they are viewed as a safer person. And then, too, it is hard for them to be believed as well.
is that fact that they reported to women usually? Because
Yes.
I've never heard it before.
Yes, when children are experiencing SA or violence, yes, they were typically reported to women.
Okay, I was just I never heard that before. But I like I said, I think that the only way that things move forward is through both sides working together in order to understand what is needed and then also understand how it can be given in a way where it's not received as because I don't protect because I'm masculine. I protect because I love the people that I'm around. But I don't view protection as me trying to fight somebody. Protection for me is you give information to prevent, you try to prevent things from happening. And
Well, I
that
am talking about protection in terms of like protect from violence, not in terms of information.
okay, but how I
That's the context I'm using protection in. And I
okay,
would say that protection, if we look at the constructs of masculinity and femininity, protection has been assigned to masculinity because of a patriarchal structure. And I think this is, again, men's illusion of protecting women, where really them leaning into the masculinity that's been socially constructed is what's harming women and themselves. So
would you
I agree with you. I do think we need to get on the same page, but so many men are so resistant because in some cases the patriarchy really benefits them.
I agree with that. Now, would you agree that in your life you have men that want to protect women or want to protect you and believe in protecting you? Would you say that? Or the women in their family?
Um, yeah, I mean, it's hard to say in what aspects. I think just like there are white people who haven't deconstructed their whiteness and how that's harmful and they're ignorant to that, even if they might have the, most well-intentioned and non-prejudiced bone in their body. I think the same thing comes with masculinity, that just not many men have really deconstructed their masculinity in terms to how it's harmful for them. So in my experience, the men that protect women and children the most have really embraced aspects of femininity.
But but I thank you for all that,
And
but
they're very secure in their persons, even though they don't appeal to like traditional masculine traits.
okay, but I do need to answer, like, do you have men in your life that you believe would protect you as a woman? You have a husband, you have father or brothers. Do you have men in your life that fall under, they would protect you, yes or no?
In
Or
like what
they
context?
well, no,
No,
they
no, I've
protect
never
you.
met my father. No, I have no brothers.
You have a husband.
Um,
You said you're married.
no, we're divorced.
Okay.
Well, we don't live together.
Oh, so no men in your life ever you believe would protect you.
Again, in like what context?
Uh, the whatever context you're giving, do men really want to protect women? I'm asking, have you ever experienced
I
having a
don't
man
think
in your
that's
life?
the right question. Sure. Do I think there are men that if I needed assistance would come to my aid? Sure. But do I think those same men would turn around and hurt me? Yes. I've experienced more
But
violence,
I
harassment, and hate from men than I've experienced love, um, what you would consider protection, and respect.
I'm sorry that that has happened to you because you deserved better. But while I
But
am sorry that those things happened to you,
sure.
I do want to just focus on the protection part because we agree that those men exist. And so while I agree that those men exist, I'm trying to find out, have you ever experienced and do you know any men that you believe for you would fall under?
I feel like answered your question. I said yes, there are certain men in my life who, if I were in distress, would come to my aid.
Okay, so
But
uh,
I would say the same thing for the women in my life.
but you see, but this is what you're doing, right? And I want to point it out so you see you get the pushback from men at times. You answer the question, but you can't answer the question without also trying to diminish what they do by letting us know that it's not important because someone else will do it.
Well, I'm showing that it's not a male specialty.
I
That
didn't
just
say
because you're a man and you're going to protect me, then I'm going to be like, oh, thank you so much. If you're
nobody
a woman and you protect me, you'll get the same kind of thing. I
nobody
don't think like men need a pat on the back for what I would say is like doing something decent. From my experience, I have seen women step in more when women are being harmed or in distress than
and
men do.
that
But
would be
that's
what
anecdotal. That's anecdotal. My point with that is that as a woman, I've received more harm from men
okay.
than aid, love, so on and so forth. And
Can
that's something that needs to be addressed because if they stopped harming me, then I
yeah,
wouldn't need protection.
I 1,000% agree with you. Would you also receive me saying to you that as a man, I've received more harm from women, the same way that I've received from you, that as a woman, you've received more harm from men?
Um, so I haven't received that harm from women. Have you received that harm from men?
I've received more harm from women in my life than I have from men.
Okay. Do you think that's the typical male experience?
I don't know. I don't know because
So
I can
I just don't think you can see anything outside of your own anecdotal experience, which is fine.
you're
But I
saying
only have about 15 minutes left, and I'm gonna try and get one more person on here. But I appreciate you coming on. It was a nice conversation, and I hope you have a great weekend.
I'm so fucking cute, bitch. I'm so fucking cute.